My name is Geneva, and I am 63 years old. After my husband Harold passed away, I moved into my daughter's guest room, hoping to find comfort in family. One night, I overheard her telling a friend that I was just a burden. Dead weight. Those two words shattered my heart. I did not confront her. I did not cry in front of her. I quietly packed my bags and left before sunrise. Months later, she came looking for me, but by then everything had changed. Before I continue, I would love to know where you are joining me from today. Please take a moment to like this video and subscribe if you have not already. This story taught me something about love loss and the strength we never knew we had. Stay with me until the end, because what my daughter discovered when she finally found me changed everything. Let me take you back to the beginning, to a time when my life was full and my heart was whole. I lived in a small town in Tennessee, the kind of place where everybody knows your name and neighbors still bring casseroles when someone falls ill. Harold and I had built our life there over 40 years. We met at a friend's party when I was barely 22. He was a quiet man, an electrical engineer who spoke more with his hands than with words. But when he looked at me, I felt seen in a way I had never experienced before. We got married 6 months after that first meeting. People said we were rushing, that we barely knew each other, but Harold and I knew something they did not. We knew that when you find the right person, time does not matter. What matters is the feeling in your chest when they walk into a room. What matters is the certainty that you would choose them again and again in every lifetime. We started with nothing. Our first apartment was a tiny studio above a hardware store. The pipes leaked, the floors creaked, and in winter we could see our breath indoors. But we were happy. Harold would come home covered in grease and sawdust, and I would have dinner waiting. We would sit on our second-hand couch eating spaghetti from mismatched plates and talk about the future we were going to build. And we did build it. Slowly, brick by brick, dream by dream. We saved every penny until we could afford a small house on Maple Street. It was not much to look at when we bought it. The paint was peeling, the garden was overgrown, and the previous owners had left behind a mess of broken furniture. But Harold saw potential where others saw problems. Together, we sanded the floors, painted the walls, planted roses in the front yard. Every corner of that house held a memory. Every scratch on the wooden table told a story. I became a teacher. Elementary school, first grade mostly. 35 years of teaching children to read, to count, to believe in themselves. It was exhausting work, but I loved it. There is something magical about watching a child's face light up when they finally understand something. That moment of discovery of pride, it never got old. Harold continued his work as an engineer, eventually becoming a supervisor at a local plant. He was respected, admired, the kind of man people went to when they needed advice. But at home, he was just Harold. The man who made me coffee every morning, who held my hand during thunderstorms, who slow danced with me in the kitchen even when there was no music playing. We had one child, a daughter named Meredith. She came into our lives like a whirlwind, full of energy and curiosity. From the moment she could walk, she was running. From the moment she could talk, she was asking questions. Why is the sky blue? Where do birds go in winter? Why do people get old? Meredith was brilliant. That was clear from the start. She excelled in school, won every spelling bee, every science fair. Teachers would pull me aside and tell me that she was special, that she would go far. And she did. She got accepted to a prestigious university in Boston when she was just 18. I remember the day she left, how proud Harold was, how he kept adjusting her luggage even though it was already perfectly organized. I remember the ache in my chest as I watched her walk through the airport security, turning back once to wave before disappearing into her new life. She met Kevin in college. He was studying finance, ambitious and charming in a way that made me slightly uneasy, but Meredith was in love, and who was I to question that? They got married right after graduation, a beautiful ceremony in a garden overlooking the ocean. Harold walked her down the aisle, and I saw tears in his eyes for the first time in 20 years. They settled in Atlanta. Kevin got a job at a big firm, and Meredith climbed the corporate ladder with the same determination she had shown in everything else. She became a marketing director before she turned 35. They bought a big house in a wealthy suburb, had 2 children. Tyler came first, then Sophie 3 years later. Our grandchildren, the lights of our lives. But somewhere along the way, Meredith drifted away from us. The phone calls became shorter, less frequent. Visits home became rare, just a few times a year, and even then she seemed distracted, always checking her phone, always talking about deadlines and meetings. Harold noticed it too. He would sit on the porch after she left, staring at the road as if willing her car to come back. He never said anything, but I knew it hurt him. It hurt me too. Still, I told myself she was busy. She had a career, of family responsibilities. She did not have time to call her parents every day. That was normal, right? That was just how life worked when children grew up and built their own worlds. Then Harold got sick. 2 years before he passed, the doctors found cancer in his lungs. Stage 4. It did not make sense. Harold had never smoked a day in his life. He ate well, exercised regularly, took care of himself. But cancer does not care about fairness. It takes whoever it wants, whenever it wants. I became his caregiver. Full-time, no breaks, no complaints. For 18 months, I was by his side every moment. I learned to administer medications, to change bandages, to read the signs when he was in pain, even though he tried to hide it. I slept on a chair next to his bed because I could not bear to be in our bedroom alone. I held his hand through the bad nights, whispered to him during the worse ones. Meredith came home 3 times during that entire period, 3 times in 18 months. Each visit lasted 2 or 3 days before she had to rush back for some urgent meeting or conference. I did not blame her. I told myself she was doing her best. But Harold asked about her constantly. He wanted to see his daughter, to hold his grandchildren one more time. I called Meredith once, crying, begging her to come home for a weekend. She said she would try. She never came. Harold passed away on a quiet autumn night. He went in his sleep, which is what everyone says is the best way to go. Peaceful, painless. But there is nothing peaceful about watching the love of your life take their last breath. There is nothing painless about waking up and realizing that the hand you have been holding for 40 years will never hold yours again. The house became unbearably empty after that. Every room echoed with memories. I could not walk into the kitchen without seeing Harold at the stove making his famous scrambled eggs. I could not sit on the porch without expecting him to join me with 2 cups of coffee. The silence was so loud it made my ears ring. Meredith came for the funeral. She stayed a week, helped me sort through some of Harold's things. On her last day, she sat me down and made a suggestion that would change everything. "Mom," she said, taking my hands in hers, "why do you not come live with us? The kids would love to have you around, and I want to take care of you. Dad would want that." I looked into her eyes and saw sincerity. At least I thought I did. Maybe I just saw what I wanted to see. A chance to be close to my daughter again. A chance to know my grandchildren. A chance to not be so terribly, crushingly alone. I said yes. The decision to leave Tennessee was one of the hardest I have ever made. This was not just a house I was leaving. It was my entire life wrapped up in wooden walls and flower gardens, and the smell of Harold's aftershave that still lingered in the bathroom cabinet. I spent 2 months preparing, sorting through 40 years of accumulated memories, deciding what to keep, what to donate, what to throw away. Every item held a story. The china set from our wedding, the armchair where Harold would read his newspapers, The quilt my grandmother had made for us when we first got married, now faded and worn but still warm. My friends tried to talk me out of it. Barbara from next door came over one afternoon with a plate of cookies and concern in her eyes. "Geneva," she said, "are you sure about this? You have lived here your whole life. Your friends are here. Your church is here. Harold is buried here." I know I told her, but I cannot stay in this house alone, Barbara. Every corner reminds me of him, and Meredith wants me there. My grandchildren are there. I need to try. Barbara nodded slowly, though I could see she was not convinced. "Just promise me you will come back if it does not work out," I promised. At the time, I meant it. Selling the house was surprisingly quick. A young couple fell in love with it at the first showing. They talked about raising their children there, about planting tomatoes in the backyard, about hosting Thanksgiving dinners in the dining room. I signed the papers with a lump in my throat, knowing that this chapter of my life was officially closing. Meredith had suggested I give her a portion of the money from the sale. "For the children's college fund," she explained. "It would be a wonderful gift from their grandmother." I agreed without hesitation. After all, what did I need money for at my age? I kept enough for basic expenses and gave her the rest. Nearly $200,000. My life savings handed over with love and trust. The day I left Tennessee, I stood in the empty driveway and looked at the house one last time. The new owners had already started making changes. Different curtains in the windows, a new mailbox by the road. It was still the same house, but it was no longer mine. "Goodbye, Harold," I whispered. "I will carry you with me wherever I go." Then I got in the car and drove toward my new life. Meredith's house was everything mine was not. A 2-story colonial in a gated community with 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a pool in the backyard. The lawn was professionally maintained, the hedges trimmed to perfection. It looked like something out of a magazine. My room was on the first floor next to the garage. It was called the guest room, which should have been my first clue. I was a guest, not a resident. Not family. The room itself was small and dim, with a single window that faced the side of the neighbor's fence. No natural light, no view. But I did not complain. I unpacked my bags, hung up my clothes, placed Harold's photograph on the nightstand. I tried to make it feel like home. The first few days were actually nice. Meredith seemed happy to have me there. She showed me around the house, introduced me to the meal service they used, explained the alarm system. The children were excited to have their grandmother around. Tyler, who was 10, asked me to help with his homework. Sophie, 7, wanted me to read her bedtime stories. I threw myself into being useful. I woke up early every morning to make breakfast for the family. Pancakes, eggs, fresh orange juice. I cleaned the house while everyone was at work and school. I did laundry, organized closets, even started a small herb garden on the kitchen windowsill. For those first 2 weeks, I felt hopeful. Maybe this was the fresh start I needed. Maybe being close to Meredith would heal the distance that had grown between us. Maybe losing Harold had brought us together in a way nothing else could. But then the comments started. It was small things at first. Little remarks that stung but could be dismissed as stress or misunderstanding. "Mom, you do not need to cook every day. We have a meal service for a reason." "I was just trying to help," I said. "I thought you might like something homemade." "It is fine," Meredith said, not looking up from her phone. "Just let us know next time so we do not double order." Then it was the children. "Mom, please do not help Tyler with his homework. He has a specific routine and you might confuse him." "I was just explaining fractions," I said. "He asked me for help." "I know, but his teacher has a particular method. It is better if we stick to that." "And the kitchen. Mom, please do not rearrange things. I have a system and I need to be able to find everything quickly. I only moved the spices to make them easier to reach." "I appreciate that, but could you ask me first? This is my kitchen." Her kitchen. Her house. Her rules. I understood that I really did. But each correction felt like a door closing. Each comment pushed me further into the margins of their lives. I started spending more time in my room, reading books, watching television with the volume low so as not to disturb anyone. I came out for meals, tried to make conversation, but Meredith was always distracted. Kevin barely acknowledged my presence. Only the children still sought me out, sneaking into my room to show me their drawings or tell me about their day. One evening, about 3 weeks in, I overheard Meredith and Kevin arguing in their bedroom. The walls were thin and their voices carried. "This is not what we agreed on," Kevin said. "I thought she was staying for a few weeks, not forever." "What was I supposed to do?" Meredith replied. "She sold her house. She has nowhere else to go." "That is not my problem. She is your mother, not mine." "Keep your voice down. She will hear you. Let her hear. Maybe she will take the hint." I lay in my bed that night, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that I had misheard. That Kevin did not really want me gone. That Meredith had not reduced my presence to an inconvenience to be managed. But deep down, I knew the truth. I was not welcome here. I never had been. The weeks that followed were a slow erosion of everything I thought I knew about my relationship with my daughter. Meredith's coldness grew more pronounced with each passing day. Where she had once at least pretended to be interested in my stories, she now barely looked up from her phone when I spoke. Conversations became transactional. "Did you eat?" "Yes." "Do you need anything from the store?" "No." "Good night." "Good night." I tried to bridge the gap. I asked about her work, thinking maybe she just needed someone to listen. She brushed me off every time. "It is complicated, Mom. You would not understand." That phrase cut deep. I had been a teacher for 35 years. I had a college degree. I had read hundreds of books, raised a child, navigated the complexities of life and death, and everything in between. But to my daughter, I was just an old woman who would not understand. Kevin made no effort to hide his displeasure. He treated me like furniture, something to walk around rather than engage with. At dinner, he would talk to Meredith about his day, about the children, about weekend plans, all while looking through me as if I were not there. On the rare occasions he addressed me directly, his tone was clipped, impatient. "Geneva, could you pass the salt?" Not Mom. Not even a proper name with warmth. Just Geneva spoken like a command to a servant. I started eating my meals earlier alone in the kitchen to avoid the uncomfortable silence of family dinners. I told myself it was because I preferred eating before everyone got home, but the truth was I could not bear to sit at that table and feel invisible. The worst part was being separated from Tyler and Sophie. Those two children had become my reason for getting up in the morning. Their laughter, their questions, their hugs. They were the only ones in that house who seemed genuinely happy to see me. But Meredith began limiting our time together. "Mom, the kids need to focus on their activities. They do not have time to sit around chatting. Sophie just wanted to show me her art project. She can show you later. Right now she has piano practice." Later never came. There was always another activity, another reason why the children could not spend time with their grandmother. I started to feel like I was being deliberately kept away from them. One afternoon, Sophie snuck into my room while Meredith was on a work call. She climbed onto my bed, her little face serious. "Grandma," she whispered, "why does Mommy not want us to play with you?" I felt my heart crack. "What do you mean, sweetheart? Mommy just wants you to do your homework and practice piano." "But I already did all that, and she still said I could not come see you." I pulled her into a hug, trying to hide the tears that were forming in my eyes. "Your mommy is just very busy, Sophie. She has a lot on her mind. But she loves you very much. And so do I." Sophie hugged me back, her small arms tight around my neck. "I love you too, Grandma. I wish you could stay forever." Forever. Such a big word from such a small person. I wished I could promise her that, but I was beginning to realize that my forever in this house was running out. The isolation grew more suffocating with each week. When Meredith had friends over, I was asked to stay in my room. "It might be awkward, Mom. They do not really know you." When they went out to restaurants, I was left behind. "We will bring something back for you. You rest. When there were family outings, I was rarely invited. "It is going to be a long day, Mom. Lots of walking. You should take it easy." I was being erased piece by piece from the family I had traveled so far to be part of, and the worst thing was no one seemed to notice. Or maybe they did notice and they just did not care. At night, I would hold Harold's photograph and talk to him. I told him about my days, about the loneliness, about the growing realization that our daughter had become a stranger. I asked him what I should do, but of course he could not answer. The silence in my room was different from the silence in our old house. This silence was not comforting. It was cold. I started to wonder if coming here had been a mistake. I had given up everything. My home, my friends, my independence, my savings. And for what? To be tolerated. To be hidden away like a shameful secret. But where could I go? I had nowhere left. No house to return to, no money to start over. I was trapped in a place where I was not wanted, and there seemed to be no way out. Little did I know that everything was about to come to a head. That one overheard conversation would change the course of my life forever. It was a Friday night in February, 4 months after I had moved in. The kind of cold gray evening that makes you want to curl up with a blanket and a cup of tea and forget about the world outside. Meredith had mentioned earlier that some friends were coming over. The usual routine followed. I was gently reminded that it might be best if I stayed in my room for the evening. "We are just going to be catching up, Mom. Girl talk. You would probably be bored anyway." I nodded and retreated to my small space next to the garage. I had stopped arguing, stopped trying to insert myself where I was not wanted. It was easier to just comply, to make myself small and invisible, to count down the hours until I could go to sleep and escape into dreams where Harold was still alive and I was still home. Around 10 o'clock, I realized I had forgotten to bring water to my room. My throat was dry and the pills I took for my blood pressure needed to be swallowed with plenty of liquid. I debated waiting until the guests left, but I did not know how long that would be. Surely I could just slip through quickly, grab a glass of water from the kitchen, and return unnoticed. I opened my door quietly and padded down the hallway in my slippers. The living room was around the corner, and I could hear voices and laughter drifting from that direction. I kept my head down, intent on getting to the kitchen as fast as possible. But then I heard my name. I stopped. I did not mean to eavesdrop. Every instinct told me to keep walking, to not listen, to preserve whatever was left of my dignity. But my feet would not move. My ears strained toward the conversation against my will. "So your mom is living here now?" one of Meredith's friends asked. "That must be nice." Meredith laughed, but it was not a warm sound. It was sharp bitter. "Nice. Please. She is just a burden. Dead weight." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually staggered back a step, my hand reaching out to steady myself against the wall. "Oh, come on," another friend said. "She is your mother." I know Meredith continued, her voice dripping with frustration. "But she follows me around like a lost puppy. She has nothing to do, no life of her own. She just sits there waiting for attention. Kevin is going crazy. He wants his house back. I want my house back. Can you not find her a senior living place or something?" the first friend suggested. "I have been looking. But those places cost money, and she sold her house, gave me most of the money for the kids' college fund. So now she has nothing. She is stuck here. And so are we." There was a moment of silence. Then someone changed the subject to something about a vacation they were planning. The conversation moved on casual and light, as if my entire existence had not just been reduced to 2 devastating words. Dead weight. I do not know how long I stood there in that hallway. It could have been seconds or hours. Time lost all meaning. All I knew was the pain radiating through my chest, the tears streaming silently down my face, the absolute shattering of everything I had believed about my daughter's love. I never got that glass of water. I turned around and walked back to my room, closed the door softly, and sat on the edge of my bed. I was shaking so hard my teeth chattered. I picked up Harold's photograph and held it against my chest, rocking back and forth like a child seeking comfort from a nightmare. But this was not a nightmare. This was real. My daughter thought I was a burden. Dead weight. Something to be disposed of when it became too inconvenient. I thought about all the years I had devoted to raising her, the sleepless nights when she was sick, the sacrifices we made to send her to the best schools, the pride I felt at every graduation, every achievement, every milestone. I thought about how much Harold had loved her, how his eyes would light up whenever she called, how he had asked for her in his final days, and she had not come. Was this the reward for a lifetime of love? To be called dead weight by the person I had given everything to? I sat there until the first gray light of dawn crept through my window. By then my tears had dried. My shaking had stopped. And I had made a decision. I was not going to confront Meredith. I was not going to beg for her affection or plead for a place in her home. I still had my dignity. I still had my self-respect. If my daughter did not want me, then I would not force my presence on her. I would leave, quietly, without drama, without accusations. I would simply disappear from her life the way she had been slowly erasing me from hers. I waited until everyone left the house that morning. Meredith drove the kids to school. Kevin headed to work. The house fell silent. I packed my bags. I took only what I needed. Clothes, toiletries. Harold's photograph, a few small mementos. I left behind the furniture, the books, all the things that did not matter. Then I sat down at the kitchen table and wrote a note. I heard what you said. I understand. I will not be a burden anymore. Take care of yourself and the children. Love, Mom. I placed the note on the counter where Meredith would find it. I took one last look around the house that had never been my home. Then I called a taxi and walked out the front door. I did not look back. The taxi took me to a budget motel about 20 miles from Meredith's house. It was not much. A small room with a lumpy bed, a television that only got a few channels, a bathroom that smelled faintly of bleach. But it was mine. No one was going to make me feel unwelcome here. I paid for a week up front with the small amount of money I had kept for personal expenses. It was not going to last long. I had given most of my savings to Meredith. I had not kept enough to survive on my own for more than a month or two. Those first few days were the hardest of my life. Harder even than losing Harold, because at least when he died, I had the comfort of knowing he loved me until the very end. Now I had nothing but the echo of my daughter's words bouncing around my skull. Dead weight. Dead weight. Dead weight. I cried until I had no tears left. I barely ate, barely slept. I stared at the water-stained ceiling and wondered if there was any point in continuing. What did I have to live for? My husband was gone. My daughter did not want me. My grandchildren would probably forget me within a year. I was 63 years old with no home, no money, and no purpose. There were moments I am not proud to admit when I thought about giving up entirely, when the darkness seemed so absolute that I could not imagine any light finding its way through. I would hold Harold's photograph and apologize to him for being so weak, but then I would hear his voice in my head. Not a ghostly visitation, nothing supernatural, just the memory of how he used to talk to me when I was discouraged. You are stronger than you know, Geneva. You have survived everything life has thrown at you so far. You will survive this too. Harold had always believed in me even when I did not believe in myself. He had seen something in me, some inner strength that I had never fully recognized. If I gave up now, I would be proving him wrong. I would be proving Meredith right. I would be confirming that I was indeed nothing but dead weight. I refused to let that happen. On the 5th day, I picked up the phone and called my sister, Patricia. We had always been close growing up, but life had scattered us to different corners of the country. She lived in North Carolina now in a small house by herself ever since her husband Frank passed away 5 years ago. We talked on the phone every few weeks, but I had not seen her in person for nearly 2 years. "Patricia," I said when she answered. "It is Geneva. I need help." I told her everything. The move to Atlanta, the isolation, the overheard conversation, my escape. Patricia listened without interrupting, and when I finished, there was a long silence. Then she said, "You get on the next bus to North Carolina. Today. Right now. You hear me? Patricia, I cannot impose on you. Impose Geneva. You are my sister. You are family. Real family, not the kind that calls you dead weight behind your back. You come here and you stay as long as you need. Forever, if that is what it takes." I cried again, but this time they were tears of relief. I was not alone. I still had someone who wanted me. The bus ride from Georgia to North Carolina took about 6 hours. I spent most of it staring out the window, watching the landscape change from urban sprawl to rolling hills to small towns that reminded me of home. By the time we pulled into the station, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Patricia was waiting for me. She looked older than I remembered, her hair gone completely gray, her face lined with years of laughter and sorrow. But her eyes were the same. Sharp, warm, full of the fierce loyalty that had defined her since childhood. She did not say anything at first. She just walked up to me and wrapped her arms around me, holding me tight like she used to when we were little girls and the world seemed too big and scary. "Welcome home, Geneva," she whispered. For the first time in months, I felt like maybe everything was going to be okay. Patricia's house was modest but comfortable. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that always smelled like fresh bread and coffee. She had turned the spare room into a sewing space, but she cleared it out immediately to make room for me. I tried to protest. "Patricia, I cannot take your sewing room." She waved her hand dismissively. "I have been meaning to reorganize that mess for years. You are doing me a favor." That was Patricia, always finding a way to make you feel like you were helping her even when she was the one doing all the giving. The first few weeks were about healing. I slept a lot, ate regular meals for the first time in months, and slowly began to feel human again. Patricia did not push me to talk about what had happened. She was just there, a constant presence, making coffee in the morning and tea in the evening, sitting with me on the porch and watching the birds at the feeder she had set up in the backyard. But I knew I could not hide forever. I could not spend the rest of my life nursing my wounds in my sister's spare bedroom. I needed to find a purpose, a reason to get up in the morning beyond just existing. So I started volunteering. The local library was looking for help with their children's reading program. 35 years of teaching had to be good for something, right? I walked in one Tuesday morning, introduced myself to the head librarian, and offered my services. She looked at me with surprise, then something that might have been respect. "You are a retired teacher." "Yes, ma'am. First grade mostly. 35 years in Tennessee." "Well," she said with a smile, "I think you might be exactly what we need." Within a month, I had become a fixture at the Millbrook Public Library. I read stories to toddlers during the morning sessions. I helped elementary schoolers with their homework in the afternoons. I taught basic computer skills to seniors who were intimidated by technology. The staff started calling me Miss Geneva, and children would run up to hug me when they arrived. It felt good to be needed again, to be valued for what I could contribute rather than resented for existing. I also made friends. Real friends, not just acquaintances who tolerated my presence. There was Eleanor, 70 years old, a retired nurse who volunteered at the hospital gift shop. There was Margaret, 68, a former accountant who had taken up watercolor painting in her retirement. The 3 of us started meeting for coffee every Wednesday, then expanded it to a weekly book club that met at whoever's house had the best snacks. I started tutoring math to struggling students in the community. Word spread about the retired teacher who had a gift for making fractions make sense, and soon I had a small but steady stream of clients. I did not charge much, just enough to contribute to Patricia's household expenses and save a little for emergencies. My health improved too. I began walking every morning, rain or shine, through the quiet streets of Millbrook. I joined a gentle yoga class at the community center. I ate better, slept better, laughed more. The darkness that had consumed me in that motel room started to fade, replaced by something I had not felt in a long time: hope. 6 months after I arrived in North Carolina, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. She was not young, no. Her hair was gray, her face was lined, her body was not what it used to be. But her eyes were bright. Her shoulders were straight. She looked like someone who had been through hell and come out the other side scarred, but not broken. I was not dead weight. I was not a burden. I was a woman who had rebuilt her life from ashes, and I was proud of who I had become. 7 months after I left Atlanta, my phone rang. I was at Patricia's house helping her prepare dinner when I saw the name on the screen. Meredith. My heart stopped for a moment. I had not heard from my daughter since the day I walked out of her house. Not a call, not a text, nothing. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let it ring until it went to voicemail, to pretend I had not seen it. But I had never been good at pretending. And despite everything, despite all the pain and betrayal, Meredith was still my daughter. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and answered, "Mom." The voice on the other end was shaky, uncertain. Nothing like the confident, dismissive tone I remembered. "Where are you?" "I have been looking everywhere." "I am safe," I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "That is all you need to know." "Please, Mom. I need to see you. I need to explain." "There is nothing to explain. I heard everything I needed to hear." There was a sob on the other end of the line. "I am so sorry. Please, let me come see you." I stood there in Patricia's kitchen holding the phone, wrestling with decades of maternal instinct. Part of me wanted to tell her no, to protect myself from more pain, more rejection. But another part of me, the part that had carried her for 9 months and raised her for 18 years and loved her every single day since, could not refuse. I gave her Patricia's address. Meredith arrived the next afternoon. 7 hours of driving, and she looked like she had not slept for any of them. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hair was tangled, her clothes were wrinkled. This was not the polished, put-together woman I had lived with in Atlanta. This was someone who had been through something difficult. I opened the door and looked at her. She looked back at me, and I saw her eyes widen. "Mom," she breathed, "you look different." I did look different. Healthier, happier, more alive than I had been in years. The transformation must have been startling to someone who expected to find a broken old woman waiting to be rescued. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. We sat in Patricia's living room, cups of tea cooling on the coffee table between us. Meredith could not stop staring at me as if she could not quite believe what she was seeing. Finally, she spoke. "I am so sorry, Mom. I did not mean those words. I never should have said them." "You did mean them," I replied gently but firmly. "At that moment, you meant every word." She flinched as if I had slapped her. "No, I was stressed. Work was crazy. Kevin was pressuring me. I was overwhelmed. I took it out on you, and I became dead weight." Meredith started to cry. Not delicate tears, but deep, racking sobs that shook her whole body. "I have never forgiven myself. After you left, everything fell apart." I listened as she told me what had happened in the months since my departure. Without me to blame for their problems, she and Kevin had been forced to face the truth about their marriage. They had been unhappy for years, held together by routine and obligation rather than love. The cracks that had been papered over started to show. Arguments became daily occurrences. Silences stretched into hours, then days. They were separated now, Meredith told me. Kevin had moved out 2 months ago. They were talking about divorce. And the children, she continued, wiping her eyes. Tyler and Sophie ask about you every single day. Where is Grandma? Why did she leave? Is she coming back? Sophie cries herself to sleep sometimes asking for you. That hurt more than anything. The thought of my grandchildren suffering because of what had happened between Meredith and me. I pushed you away, Mom, Meredith said, her voice breaking. And now I am losing everything. My marriage is over. My kids are heartbroken. And I lost you, the one person who has always been there for me. I reached out and took her hand. It was a reflex, the instinct of a mother comforting her child no matter how much that child had hurt her. I am sorry your marriage is struggling, I said quietly. But that is not because of me. You and Kevin had problems long before I arrived. I was just an easy target, someone to blame. Meredith nodded, unable to meet my eyes. You are right. I know you are right. I did not want to face it. It was easier to be frustrated with you than to admit that my whole life was falling apart. I squeezed her hand, feeling the fragility of it. This was not the confident, successful daughter I had always known. This was a scared, broken woman who had finally been forced to confront her own failures. I love you, Meredith, I said. I will always love you, but I cannot go back to being someone you resent. I have built a life here. I have purpose. I have peace. I will not give that up to become your burden again. She looked up at me, fear in her eyes. Then what do? We start over, I said, but differently this time. That conversation was the beginning of something new. Not a return to the way things were, but the construction of something better. Something built on honesty rather than assumption, on respect rather than obligation. I did not move back in with Meredith. I stayed in North Carolina with Patricia in the community I had come to love, surrounded by friends who valued me for who I was. But I opened the door for Meredith to earn back my trust. We started with weekly phone calls. Real conversations, not the shallow check-ins we used to have. Meredith would tell me about her struggles with the separation, her therapy sessions, the hard work she was doing to understand why she had treated me the way she did. I would tell her about my life in Millbrook, my volunteering, my friends, the small joys I had discovered in this unexpected chapter of my existence. It was not easy. There were awkward silences and moments when old hurts resurfaced. But we kept trying. We kept showing up for each other even when it was uncomfortable. Meredith started therapy, and through it she began to unravel the patterns that had led her to push me away. She realized that her relentless pursuit of success had left her exhausted and resentful, and that she had taken out that resentment on the people closest to her. She had been so focused on appearing perfect that she had lost sight of what actually mattered. I am not making excuses, she told me one evening on the phone. What I did was wrong, but I am trying to understand it so I can be better. For you, for the kids, for myself. I appreciated her honesty. I appreciated that she was doing the work, not just apologizing and expecting everything to go back to normal. That was growth. That was change. Tyler and Sophie came to visit that summer. They stayed for 2 weeks, and those 14 days were some of the happiest of my life. We went to the library together, and I introduced them to all my friends. We baked cookies in Patricia's kitchen, getting flour everywhere and laughing until our stomachs hurt. We took walks in the park, fed the ducks at the pond, stayed up late watching movies and eating popcorn. I missed you so much, Grandma Sophie said one night, curled up next to me on the couch. Please do not ever go away again. I wrapped my arm around her and kissed the top of her head. I am not going anywhere, sweetheart. And even when we are not in the same place, I am always with you. Right here. I pointed to her heart. She smiled and snuggled closer. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, baby girl. More than you will ever know. A year passed then, too. Meredith's divorce was finalized. It was painful, but she came through it stronger and more self-aware. She and Kevin managed to maintain a civil relationship for the sake of the children, sharing custody and making decisions together. Our relationship continued to heal. Meredith visited North Carolina several times a year, and I even went back to Atlanta on occasion, though I always stayed in a hotel rather than her house. It was better that way. We both needed our own spaces, our own lives. But we also needed each other. On my 65th birthday, Meredith flew out to surprise me. She brought the kids and a cake she had baked herself, slightly lopsided, but made with love. We celebrated in Patricia's backyard, surrounded by my new friends and my old family. And I thought about how different this moment was from where I had been just 2 years earlier. I had been so lost then, so broken, convinced that my life was over, that I had nothing left to offer the world. But I had been wrong. Losing everything had forced me to find myself, and what I found was a woman who still had so much to give, so much to live for. Now, looking back from where I sit today, I can see the shape of my journey with clarity that was impossible when I was in the middle of it. The pain of Harold's death, the hope of moving in with Meredith, the devastation of being called dead weight, the despair of those early days alone, and then the slow, steady climb back to light. I am 68 years old now. My hair is completely white, my joints ache when it rains, and I cannot stay up past 10 o'clock most nights. But I am happy, genuinely, deeply happy. I have a purpose, friends, a community that values me. I have a relationship with my daughter that, while different from what I once imagined, is honest and real. I have grandchildren who love me and know they are loved in return. And I have learned lessons that I carry with me every day. I learned that your value is not determined by how others treat you. Meredith called me dead weight, but that did not make it true. I was the same person before she said those words and after. The only thing that changed was my awareness of what she really thought. And once I understood that her opinion did not define my worth, I was free to create my own. I learned that love must have boundaries to be healthy. I had always believed that a mother's love should be unconditional and unlimited, and my love for Meredith is unconditional, but my tolerance for mistreatment is not. I could love her and still refuse to be devalued by her. Those two things were not mutually exclusive. I learned that it is never too late to start over. At 63, I thought my life was essentially finished. I was wrong. Some of the best years of my life have happened since then. New friendships, new purposes, new joys I never expected to find. Age is not a limit. It is just a number. And I learned that healing is possible even from the deepest wounds. My relationship with Meredith will never be what it was before that February night. The trust that was broken cannot be fully restored. But something new has grown in its place, something more honest, more intentional, more precious, because we both know how close we came to losing it forever. If you are out there right now feeling like a burden to someone you love, I want you to hear this. You are not what they say you are. You are not defined by their frustration or their dismissiveness or their cruel words spoken when they think you cannot hear. You are a whole person worthy of love and respect and dignity. And if someone cannot see that the problem is with their vision, not with your value, it is not easy to walk away from people you love. It is not easy to start over when everything you built has crumbled. But it is possible. I am living proof. And if I can do it at 63 with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart, then you can do it too. That night when I heard my daughter call me dead weight, I thought my life was over. I thought I had nothing left. But I was wrong. Losing everything forced me to find myself. And what I found was a woman who still had so much to give, so much to live for. My daughter learned her lesson. Our relationship will never be the same, but maybe it will be better. Honest, real, built on mutual respect rather than obligation. And it is never too late to choose again. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt like a burden to someone you loved? How did you find your way back to knowing your worth? Leave a comment below and share your story. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you have not already subscribed to this channel so you do not miss more stories like mine, thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for listening. And wherever you are, whatever you are going through, I hope you know that you matter. You are not dead weight. You are valuable, you are worthy, and you are loved. Take care of yourselves, and remember, it is never too late to choose again.